So thank you guys for coming. I really, really appreciate this. My name is Craig Rice, and I was born, in the Rondo neighborhood, actually 422 Fuller, which is not there anymore. But, it's been a journey for me. And one of the things that Robin is sort of carrying on, she's actually carrying on a legacy of a legacy. I was very, very influenced by Robin's father. He had an organization when I decided that I didn't want to be the gangster that I thought I wanted to be. I really wanted to be, it was more about art. And he really had an organization that was really developing artistic development in young people. And it was photography. And they made a film in 1970, which is now part of the Minnesota Historical Society and the Walker Archives. It was a feature film. It really developed in me a desire to be creative. And Robert, her father, got that from Gordon, and he was bringing it to the next generation, and then Robin's bringing it to the next generation. So this is rolling. And I remember when I first met Gordon, I wanted him to understand that he had made such an incredible effect. It's almost like a wave that kept going out and coming back, going out and coming back, and saving and propelling and moving lots of young people forward, not just boys, but also women. And Robin is an example of that. Kokayi I've known from that time frame, actually, from St. Paul. And Art, I was telling Art, I met Art in Ames, Iowa. I was booking talent for Minneapolis colleges, and I was 19 years old, and I met him in a group, and his presence so impressed me that I followed him for the rest of my life. This is not the first time we met, but so it's great to be back on stage with him, and I won't even tell you how many years ago that was, but it was a while ago. So this aspect of the arts and entertainment and these gentlemen growing underneath the Gordon Parks influence is really, really there. We're here because of the process. There's one other thing that Robin, I don't know if you got this, Ernie Hudson's in this movie. It was from here. He's an actor. He's Oz and Gracie and Ghostbusters, and I totally forgot that he was in this movie till I saw him in the film. So again, that legacy continues to roll even today. Grace and Frankie, that's the other series he's in right now. So this is part of what this is all about. So I'm going to just ask a couple questions here, and I just want to kind of
also get your car fixed.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
You can pay that insurance and get your car fixed.
Exactly. He loves commercials. He can do that. Yeah. So I was going to just start with you, Kokayi, since you were the first one here. I want to just talk to you about, kind of give your background. This gentleman, for a lot of people don't understand, he is probably the preeminent location manager producer in Hollywood. He has worked with Spielberg and Clint Eastwood, and I wanted him to just explain that, because it's not a role that a lot of people understand and know. Could you approach that?
It's really good to be here, and thank you guys for having me.
Use your mic, please.
Yeah, here we go.
We're recording this.
Everything Craig talked about the Inner City Youth League and Bobby Hickman, and Bobby was the director. I was the deputy director. I started there right out of high school, as well as started at KTCA right out of high school, at a program called Black Voices, which was funded by the Rockefeller Foundation, to get some black people off the street, as really was. It was 1968, so it was a lot happening at that time. But working at the Inner City Youth League, he had multiple jobs. One, I taught photography. The other was we were in the community. If there was an issue happening, we were there. So it meant dealing with a lot of government agencies. It meant dealing with the people of the community. And as I've said before, it was grad school for being a location manager. Because a location manager, if you don't know, is a person who at the beginning takes the script and meets with the director, producer, production designer, and they determine what locations are going to be shot off the studio or off the lot. And then we do the research through well, now computers or whatever, and then we contact film commissions and the architecture, the time period, all of that stuff is considered. And then we go out and actually bring choices. And it's something, first of all, to the production designer, and then it gets whittled down, and then it goes to the director and producer, and then it gets chosen. Once that happens, now you've got to do the permits, you got to do the contracts, you got to figure out where all the trucks are going to park, where the company is going to eat, if you're going to do stunts and all that stuff, you got to coordinate with the police, the fire department. So that's what location management really is. It's all of that. But everything that you do, or that I did, for taking the pictures of the locations, Inner City Youth League, dealing with all those entities, Inner City Youth League. So basically, you learn the job, but I was with skills that I had already gathered here. Now, by being and working with Bobby, and Bobby allowing me, Gordon would allow him to go and watch him make films, and Bobby said, well, can Kokayi come? And so the first one was the second Shaft movie, Shaft's Big Score, in New York. And I was just like, because we had made a film, which Hampton Alexander, and it was us with a camera and it's a sound crew. I was one of the cinematographer, DP, camera operator, but we were lighting with we had one real light, and then we had like lamps. Yeah. If we needed more light, you take the shade off. You know what I mean? We were lighting with whatever we had and however we could, but we got a film out of it, and it's not something that really, it didn't go into the theaters, but it is a completed film, and it's actually the first feature film totally produced by African Americans in the state of Minnesota. And so that's why it's in the Historical Society. A young man by the name, the late Timmy McKinney, a young man, wrote it and directed it, so you got to give him his propers. And but Bobby, being who he was, you come to inner city and you say, I really want to do something. Yeah. And he would find a way for you to be able to do it. And he got the money together, and we had this little camera, the cameras with that looks like Mickey Mouse's ears. I mean, we were making a film. And so that got done. And so we did that. But in terms of, and I'll just wrap this up because I'm done. Then I got to go to the second film to watch him work, and that was Leadbelly. And I wasn't so much in all of this now because I had that experience. And Gordon says, now listen, you ask anybody you want what they do. This is a learning thing. So that's what I did. And I knew I was a production person, having worked at KTCA. I wasn't an actor. Art, I'll tell you something. Art told me I wasn't an actor too, but anyway, so I would spend a day, like I spent a day with Bruce Surtees, the DP, and he taught me about the use of the Kukaloris and how he was making the shadow effect. I spent the day with Doris Grau, who was the script supervisor, and what she did and how dealing with continuity. Richard Wells and Reuben Watt, who were ADs, and that was a whole nother side of the business. And that they were very rare at that time. Yeah. But Gordon had them on the picture. And so one day, I'll give you these two things that happened. One day I was sitting on the set, we were in a place called Bastrop, Texas, which is right outside of Austin. And as you see some of those old scenes, Bastrop was a place that all you had to do was put dirt on the ground and you were back to the early 1900s, right? So we were in Bastrop, and this white guy comes up to me who's on the crew, and he says, can you do me a favor? And I said, well, yeah, what? He said, there's some people down the way. They've got a radio playing. Could you go down and talk to them and ask them if they could turn it down? I said, well, yeah, So I go down, and it turns out it's a black family. He just probably sent you down there. Right. It's a black family. Right. So I go down and I talk to them, and they say, oh yeah, we'll actually turn it off. I said, well, okay, thank you. So I go back and I say, yeah, they're going to turn it off. Thanks, man, thanks. And I said, well, what do you do? He says, well, my name is Les. I'm the location manager. It's the first time I ever knew there was a job. Yeah. Okay,
yeah.
there was a job. Another day we're on the set, and there's a scene, and they had a local guy they'd cast for this role, and the guy would go, every time it was time for him to do the role, he would just bust out laughing. He just couldn't get the lines out, he'd bust out laughing. So Gordon's son, David, said, let Kokayi do it. So they sent me to makeup and hair, wardrobe. So for that brief moment when the sheriff was coming, and that young guy came running in saying the sheriff is coming, that was me. Now, here's the thing. It was 2 lines. Sheriff Tom Hughes is coming, and he's going to clean up the town. Well, I didn't do it like that. I did it so fast the first time, the whole crew fell out laughing. So after they calmed down, I said, no, go ahead and slow it down. So anyway, I came back, slowed it down a bit. And so it got cut to Sheriff Tom Hughes is coming, right? But after I did it, I went to Art. I said, well, how did I do, Art? You did okay, not like an actor. And I said, okay. So anyway, but the thing about with being around Gordon, more than anything that he ever told me, was me being able to observe him work, to observe him interacting with the actors, interacting with the crew, and interacting with a stodgy production manager. Now, how many of you filmmakers in here? Any? Okay, so you know about being a production manager, watching the budget, and I can remember them having an argument close to the set about the budget and something, but I watched how Gordon handled it. And so that was a thing that was really watching him work and watching how he dealt things was what really I got from him.
Yeah, that's the key. So, Art, you again, I knew you were an actor before you did this. You had done a number of things, and so your background in acting is vast. It's decades long. So when you first got this job with Gordon, how was that? What happened, and how did that operate?
I was living in New York.
Use your mic. We're filming this.
Is it on?
Yes.
I was living in New York. Can you hear me out there in the balcony? I was living in New York, and I was playing the Village, coffee houses, and I was just really pretty much learning how to play guitar. And I had this raggedy guitar that I got from somebody was playing a guitar, and it got broke, and they gave it to me, and I said, oh, great, it was wonderful. But I remember I was an actor, and I'd done Broadway, off-Broadway, off-Broadway, off-Broadway. And
You did Ames, Iowa.
which is where we met. Is that right?
Yep, Ames, Iowa.
But I also played coffee houses, colleges, business parties as well. And I traveled around the country doing it. And Gordon Parks, so I went out for Lead Belly, and Gordon Parks was one of the people that was there auditioning people, and I walked in. I was very nervous. I could act, I could handle the acting, but the guitar work was a little difficult because I was just beginning to learn to play guitar. I was confident for my songs, but not to play for anyone else. And this young lady who was in the movie as the dancer needed someone to play guitar for her because she didn't have any music. And I was faking it anyway, like I could play guitar. And so they asked me, would I play for her? I said, no, because I didn't know how to play that well. So we rehearsed a little bit, and then we went on. And surprisingly, she did really good singing and dancing. And I didn't do too bad on the guitar. I was able to get by it without anybody detecting that I got better as I got more confident as I did more performances and studied and played more guitar, teaching myself. By the time I got to Lead Belly and was playing, I could play really good. And Roger, I helped him look like he could play. And for me, I mean, I knew how to play, but I was not that confident because I hadn't played as much as I would have liked to. Bob Dylan was a big, Richie Havens, big, I loved those two guys very much, and I wanted to play like them. And I didn't know if I had. I didn't know how to do that. I was teaching myself, but evidently I did pretty good. As the film shows, I was surprised to myself.
How was it like working with Gordon?
Gordon hired me. He hired me the first day I auditioned. And that's pretty weird. I've only had that happen to me in the how many years have I been acting, babe?
55 years ago.
55 years. And this is the first time something like that has happened, and it happened to me. And he liked me very much, and he liked the songs I sang, and he liked the way I did the role when I read. I was a little afraid because I said, "Wow, I got the part," because I know I got the part because the director doesn't make that much of commit himself that much like that. And this is Gordon Parks Sr. Whoa, you know. And he asked me to play for the other girl, and I said, I don't know how to play for anybody. I just know how to play for me. So I had to fake it. And she and I got together and rehearsed, and we did a good job. Gordon hired her, and he hired me.
That's great. That's great. One thing, yeah, that's incredible. One of the things that Kyle had said that Gordon hired him on the first meeting. Gordon, I think he has this sense of people, because he just when he meets you, he makes a decision. He's not one of those people that, like, his mind is so clear, and it's really interesting. This is half past autumn when we were in Brazil. This is my own ego. We were looking for a place to shoot him shooting Flavio, and we're in the van. He goes, "This is the place you should shoot." I said, no, we want to go farther down the road. We drove an hour away and ended up coming back to the first place Gordon had picked. It was like, I said, okay, you are the master. I don't know what made me think I could do better than you, but it was one of those things that he had this ability to just make decisions quickly, and he was usually right about them right away. And it's hard in this business because you're always second guessing yourself, trying to maybe I look for something better. So you in this role really had to find some level, because it was sort of comical too at some points in time. Did Gordon give you the direction for that, or was that something that you and
for Lead Belly?
Yeah, for Lead Belly. Yes, for Lead Belly.
Gordon.
Again, Mr. Mike. Sorry.
Gordon, he was very patient, and when he spoke, everybody listened. I listened. I was there when I wasn't supposed to shoot, because I wanted to learn something from him. And I had never done a movie before, and this was a big Paramount film. And with the people I admired in the arts who were in the film, and they did a wonderful job. And I was always learning as much as I possibly could. And it's like I wanted to learn. So I did films in foreign countries. I did about 18 films in foreign countries, and so it was kind of difficult for me to. I just need to learn the best way to do that is to communicate with the individuals who are out there trying to learn as well. Like, for instance, when you and I met, you have a great memory, very good memory. Because I knew you from some place,
Yeah.
but you're too young looking for somebody for me to know. And sure enough, it was like you were just out of high school.
Just out of high school. I was just getting to college.
And I was very impressed with you, very impressed, because I didn't deal with very many young black men.
Yeah. Well, that's how it happened. Is that the colleges here were needed for colleges student activities, right? And so they were looking for black acts to come to the colleges because most of the acts were, jugglers or white whatever, and so that's we were out. So there's this group. I forgot the name of the group. That's what I did.
Divided we stand.
Yeah. So it was this radical black group of actors and stuff like. So, but that's what it's about. But you have this ability as a performer, because a lot of people have seen your work over the years. I mean, and they respect you for it. And I just thought that was interesting in this film. I don't know, when the first time I saw this film, I didn't necessarily see the comedy. Interestingly enough, I just was so into. Gordon has a sense of sort of what's realistic filmmaking with a naturalist feel, and I think if you saw this film, you've realized it's actually almost a musical. It is. It has a very, very respect for the African American culture, specifically in the South. That those are elements that are in his work, and not so much in Shaft, but that's a different film. But if you look at Learning Tree in this one, and Oliver Solomon on Northrop, Odyssey. There's an incredible love of nature, a love of the environment, love of sunsets, and the way that people behave is not in the actor sense, but in the naturalistic sense, which is something that you're known for. So that life humor was really stronger in this film than in other ones. Go ahead.
You could really see, though, some of his early work, photography, for the Depression and where he traveled around and shot the migrant workers, and he shot the people. You could see that you could see that in the shots in the film. Yeah, and especially. I mean, it's interesting. This weekend has been, or this last couple of weeks has been great because I watched everything, Shaft, everything back to back. He loves shooting into the sun. He loves sunsets. He loves that natural feeling, which is not really in a lot of specifically African American filmmakers. That's not what they see. They're really going for the urban feel. They're going for more the slick look. And Gordon really wants the trees and the grass and the rivers and the water and the horses and those. That's that home background.
Yeah,
that's what he grew up in.
Yeah,
that's what He saw the trees. He saw all of that. And
yeah.
It's it just comes through in him and his personality.
That's good.
I see Devin.
Yes, questions.
You want to...
Questions here? Any questions here? The people are comments. I mean, what did you think about the movie? Let's start there first.
There's one person up there.
Thank you. Good. Up there, question. Yeah, Andre.
As a location manager, that is one of the problems that we really have, is that you go and you look for stuff and you see the full scope, and then you see the cut film and it's like this. And that really just, why do we really go look for all this when you shoot it like that? But then Gordon really did do that. He really did keep that width and that scope in it,
Yeah, he did. It reminds me of David Lean, reminds me of John Ford. There's, the doorway shots and the landscapes and the long shots where, especially when she comes to the field when pouring the water or getting him the water and he pours on her. I mean, that's all done in the wide shot. And I'm sure in filmmaking, you want to get in closer.
Yeah, you want to see each drop of it.
Right, exactly. Yeah. It's just, live in the environment. Other questions, comments out there in the middle there, gentlemen? Yeah, get the mic first. I'm sorry, we couldn't hear you.
Sonny Terry and Brownie McGee were listed as in the musical credits, and I'm wondering if Gordon Parks knew them before the production or how they got rolled into the film.
I believe he did. I knew them. I had an opportunity to perform with them. Sonny Terry and Brownie McGee. And Brownie McGee was blind. And he played several string instruments and well. And they both played well. And Troubadour played with him at the Troubadour in LA and the Troubadour in New York. And a few other clubs. I was honored to be able to be in their presence. That's how much they loved and respected, because they are extremely exceptional artists. And I wasn't expecting them to be brought up, but I'm so delighted that you did. So I just confirmed the fact that they were wonderful artists, consummate.
Let me ask you, did it take you a while to get used to the contacts or whatever for your eyes, or how did that go?
I was wearing new contacts that had never been, used before, and I'd never worn contacts before. So when Gordon told me that I would have to wear contacts, they were thinking, let's put him in, you know, we don't want to make it gaudy, but we want to put him in contacts that can be seen, and it'll be, you know. I said, well, I could do it without contacts, and Gordon said it would be better with contacts, and I said, okay, I'll give it. I'll be glad to do it with contacts. I just want, you know, and Gordon was so easy to work with. Oh man. But anyway, I wore the contacts, and one day something got into my eye, and and it had to be. It hurt so bad because in those days the contacts were not like this; they were like that. I mean, they were big contacts. We had to have surgery to put them in. It took 5 guys to put them in, and because they need 3 guys to hold me down. You know, and 2 guys to put them in, and then 1 guy to talk me into it psychologically to get used to them. And that was just for a snapshot. So I don't want to go on and on and on. So
No,
please.
you're fine. I remember the conversations, though, with Uncle Gordon about the struggles that he had with the studio. The battles of wanting to do this film the way he wanted to do this film. And with all that he had achieved in his career and as brilliant as this film was, them not wanting him to allowing him to do it the way he wanted to do it. And there were many battles. And I remember Daddy, when he came home, he shared with me hearing Uncle Gordon having an argument at the arguments. And I don't know if you could talk more about, talk about that a little bit, Kokayi. And that's why the release was limited. That's why a number of audiences hadn't seen it. And Uncle Gordon, there was an opportunity. Probably there were talks about re-releasing, but you were there, Kokayi.
No, that was what I was saying. By watching him, because I saw those arguments, and I was talking about the production manager who's always squeezing the budget. You know, that's their job, and they're not necessarily that creative minded. They're more budget minded. But I was right there watching this, so I could see how he handled his working with the crew, his working with the cast, and then how he could flip the switch and deal with those other arguments that had to be fought. And later on, now, I mean, I'm on my 2nd film set, so I don't know. But then, I watched the other directors that I work with. I'd never see that happen. Right. I mean, it's, back when I did Color Purple, it was thought, and I don't know how far it was up, that Gordon should have directed that film.
Yeah, yes,
Right.
yes, he was up for it.
And he was up for it, and Quincy Jones was one of the producers, and that was my first film. I'd done, like the A-Team and Knight Rider and all those television shows before that. But, the thing was, you definitely were not going to have that argument with Spielberg, okay? So if it was going over budget, he would just say, this is what we're doing, and this is what would happen, and but how much different the picture would have been. I mean, my talks with Alice Walker, I'll just say this, and this is not on this film, this is just on that. And I talked to the producer, Kathleen Kennedy, about it during the time, that why did Mr. become the redeemer in the end of the picture? Because that's not what it is in the book. No. You see, that was a story of faith and belief of that family coming back together. And I remember her telling me, well, Stephen wanted it that way, and da-da-da-da-da. Well, Alice wasn't necessarily all that happy with it either, So, but the point is, would it ever been that had it been Gordon? Yeah. Because the relationship of Gordon and Alice, they were the same kind of people. Yeah. They were the same kind of people. and having dealt with her, and then having known Gordon. So it's really interesting what a different film it might have been. Yeah. Gordon did come and do stills, and it was really a good thing for me for him to see that his work had paid off, that I had made it. I was in the business, and his allowing me to come, that I had taken enough note to be able to work on that level. But but he had to fight. He had to fight.
Gordon, I mean, I think that as calm as Gordon is on the exterior, there's definitely, I always call it that he had this little savage inside of him. I mean, he was telling me about the fighting for Richard Roundtree to have the mustache. I mean, they didn't want a black man, the studios did not want the black man to have a mustache. I don't understand why, but they did not want it. They thought it made him too, I don't know what they thought it was, but he fought for that to the point that he was willing to walk away from the picture because the picture was actually his idea. Initially, it was a white detective. Gordon forced the hand to have a black man and turned it into a black picture, and Ernest Titleman thought it was a great idea to do that because he had already done French Connection and High Plains Drifter as a writer. So he was like, let's do something different. And it also turned into, Tillman did 6 books off of Shaft. He wrote 6 movies off of Shaft and a TV series off of Shaft. So this was like he knows he made the right decision, but it was, Gordon had that, Robin knows this story. When I was doing Half-Past Autumn, Gordon wanted to make another movie, and he wrote the script. I read the script, and because at his age, he needed a younger director that was in DJ that could sort of just in case, And so I said I would do that, but there was something about the studios that didn't necessarily see Gordon. What you guys saw in this work, they just didn't see him. They either he was too rebellious, or they knew he was going to fight them, or just because he was black, he was going to make his movie, regardless of how they tried to push back on him. And it's unfortunate because I think it was a contemporary story about a young black kid that got a scholarship to go to an exclusive white school in Manhattan. And it was a great script, and it really made sense for him at his age to make this kind of story because of what Robin was talking about what are we going to do with young black men. And it was about that. He's out of his neighborhood. He was going to a school. He was getting pushed back because he was going out of his neighborhood to go to school, to an all-white school, and he was getting pushed back in the white school. I thought it was a brilliant piece, but he could not get that off the ground. I'm sorry, go ahead.
So probably the main reason was it wasn't the cookie cutter movie that they wanted. Mm-hmm. They wanted a bunch of this language, that language, you know what I mean? And, we're going to knock somebody down and da-da-da. Not something that was going to be cerebral.
Yeah.
And that's what Gordon was going to give them. Mm-hmm. And they were looking at that money, that, is it going to match what's going on now? Because they don't see that. The studio is, right now, it's the big action pictures, it's the big Marvels, it's all of that stuff. But he was going to bring something totally different for the thinking mind, just like you talk about the distribution of Leadbelly. Mm-hmm. Now, in the reality, if they had really, really known, the majority of Leadbelly songs were more popular in the white community than they are in the black community. Good Night Irene, all of those songs were really more prevalent. So they could have done a whole different campaign just based on those songs that would have had a far-reaching audience. But again, once they saw the color of the people in the movie, they narrowly looked at it. Yeah. And that's how they were narrowly looking at Gordon. He's not bringing me a black movie as we perceive black to be. Right. He's not bringing us black people as we perceive black to be with a mustache. Oh, no. That's like, for them, that's like what? A fro or, dashiki or, oh my God, we can't have that.
Right, yeah.
And just really quickly, because I want to hear from the audience, but when he healed, PBS called him to do Solomon Northup's Odyssey, 12 Years a Slave. And he was excited. Yeah, and he called, and in fact, he said, baby, to come out here and kind of spend some time on this project. I didn't. Yeah. I don't know what I had going on, big dummy, but I did get to go to the premiere with him in D.C. 12 Years a Slave, and so that was the first. He did it first.
Did you see that film?
Yes.
Solomon Northrop's Odyssey.
Odyssey.
That'll be in the next
Yeah.
Choice Cinema Series.
Yeah.
Avery
Yeah.
Brooks,
Yeah.
amazing.
Wonderful.
It was
Incredible.
amazing. So before the one that the Pohlad brothers produced, and so we need to know that. And I went to a screening of that one at the Walker Arts Center, and there was no mention, and even the promo of that movie, that Gordon Parks made that film first. And so we need to know. So in the new issue of Minneapolis St. Paul 50th anniversary issue, there's a nice little piece about Gordon Parks. So I'm proud of them for that.
That's good.
So let's do our research and know what he did. But I did bring that up at the screening. The man who was a descendant of slaves made the film first.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
he was very excited to be able to do that.
And I encourage people to see it. It's first of all, Bill Pohlad is a friend of mine, so I told him, I said, yeah, no, I like Bill, and I told him, I said, Bill, you should see this movie. I mean, because it's a different take on it, and that's anybody's right as a director. It really is about Solomon. Solomon Northrop is really about in the pain of a man who was born free, ultimately put into slavery, and so it focuses on his feeling on how what he's going to do to get free, a little bit more so than 12 Years a Slave, which is a statement about slavery in and of itself, and that's okay too. It is what it is. Any other comments out there? I know we're supposed to wrap this up. Somebody in the back there, is it the white shirt, T-shirt? I'm sorry, you got your hand up? Yeah, you? Oh, okay.
I'm going to just introduce myself to everybody. My name is Free Hickman, who you know as the great Dr. Robin Hickman. I know as Auntie Robin. I am the youngest son of Bobby Hickman's oldest son. Gordon Parks was my great uncle. Unfortunately, I never got the chance to meet him. So that's why I'm glad you three are up here. I just wanted to ask, besides from the filmmaking and all that great stuff he did as a man, what were some of the things that still sit with you that you've learned to this day?
Well, it's, to me, in a lot of times, I speak at like USC Film School and other places, it's daring to do stuff or be different or to try new stuff. I mean, him picking up the camera, him believing he could do fashion photography, him believing he could do this. I mean, the learning tree. I mean, you just don't know first of all, he wrote the book, okay? He wrote the novel. Then he wrote the screenplay from the novel. Then he produced the film, he directed the film, and he wrote the score. I mean, who does all that? I mean, Prince may have played all the instruments and on his songs, but when you get to a studio film, and I can really imagine from him going from all of that to get over here to have some guy tell you about how you should make your film. See, that's what I can really understand why he was where he was in some of those arguments that I saw. So I just, there was a thing that I wrote once. I said, I'm following your footsteps, but I'll never be able to fill them. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's good.
But deep. It's just amazing to me.
Yeah.
It's just amazing.
I think that's for me too, and it's hard to always trying things, and one of the things that when we shot the documentary that we had started to do this was his creation of Essence magazine. Yes. I mean, do you understand? He did that. A black female magazine during that period of time that's still around to this day. And where does that come from? How do you do that stuff if you've never done it before? Yes, he worked at Life magazine, but he had never made a magazine that's actually still around to this day. I mean, Life is still around to this day. Those kinds of things are what I learned from him is try things. Don't limit yourself in your mind. He always was pushing to try it, see what happens. He did an opera, he did a ballet. Do this, don't start restricting yourself. And I think that's one of the things, to your point, that I got from him, so.
Let me just say one quick thing. And for him to say to you, do you think I did anything?
Yeah.
He said that.
Yeah.
That's how much more he wanted to do.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, in part of well, you were there, Robin, when when the black kids mugged him. I mean, it's like he couldn't. I think that was more impactful for him. I mean, he's Gordon Parks, for Christ's sake, and he's an old guy, and he gets mugged in Manhattan. Right. It was like, whoa, what's going on here? You know. But to that point, when we were shooting in Harlem, we were shooting with the family that lived up in Harlem. I forgot Fontanellas. Okay, so we're on the street, and he was out there with us, and we were shooting. He took pictures of Richard, and all of a sudden these kids saw his equipment and stuff, and so they surrounded us until they saw Gordon, and they said, "Oh my God, it's Gordon Parks!" It literally, like their whole attitude changed. It was like the Messiah had come to Harlem. It was the most amazing thing I'd ever seen. We didn't need to call the cops. We didn't need to act tough. It's just, this is Gordon. And they just like totally backed off, and they wanted autographs. They turned into these kids. It was the most amazing thing. He has that, and I think when we talk about what he couldn't, or specifically making films, what they didn't allow him to do, they didn't understand who he was. They really didn't. They liked him kinda, but they didn't understand the power of this man and his influence on the world.
We'll let Art have the last word.
I do.
The ladies up here, we'll let Art. Do you have any sign? You good?
Yeah, I'm just so amazed. I'm learning so much from Kokayi. I'm learning so. It's interesting. I mean, I spent years behind the microphone in lectures and performing, and this is the 5th time I had to be told to put the microphone up. Que cosa dice? Niente. I don't know what to say. I feel, but that's kind of the situation I've gotten myself into, or I've been brought to, discussing Gordon Parks Sr. As much as the testimony here, it is very difficult for me to even get that close to what it was like to be able to work for Gordon Parks Sr. when I was just basically a kid myself, to be able to listen to him and for him to be able to connect with me. My mother and father never encouraged me to go into show business. They didn't deter me, or get in the way. My brothers and sisters didn't care, the older ones and the younger ones. And when I met Gordon Parks Sr., I was basically a kid myself. I had done a movie, and I scored the music for it because it was just all me. And I could just do what I want. And nobody knew anything about music, not even me, And it's just to hear these two gentlemen, and then of course, Gordon Parks, have Gordon Parks Sr.'s kinship here. I'm so honored. I want to make sure that I really say what I really mean, because it's so important for me to be able to be here for this. And it's difficult for me to express to you how important it is. So I don't want to make myself look like a fool or look badly, but I really love Gordon Parks so much. He brought me, he's the one who discovered me at his audition and put me in his film. And then he put me in Solomon Northrop's Odyssey, that film as well. So I got an opportunity to live with him and work with him and get to know Gordon. And he took me up under his wing to teach me a lot of things. And I was so delighted that I had no other recourse but to do this conference here. And I hope I'm invited back again. I've enjoyed myself. Thank you.
And thank you. And thank you.
Let's give everybody a round of applause. Kokayi, Robin, Art, and I want to make sure Amy and the people here at Landmark get their due. This is because of them, and hopefully the situation in St. Paul will continue to grow, because as St. Paul born and bred people, except for you, Art, but you can be an honorary St. Paul. Yeah, right. Thank you for coming. Take care. Have a good night.